Zandy, what's up?
Xander and Thias, the state of everything is awesome. Everything is good in America. We are alive, and the 4th of July just happened. Woo! All right, America.
We got a lot to catch up on, man.
What's happening in the world, man? What's happening in your world, man?
Uh, just another day, man. Had a good Fourth of July. I'm wearing this shirt in homage to Widfest 2019.
Homage.
We first time seeing Dead and Company. That was right after, literally the next night after our podcast. Took a bus down to New York. That was 3 weeks ago. It's been 3 weeks since our last podcast.
Yeah, we did a little bit of a break there. I apologize. Did a little bit of a shifting location here. I'm out in the great old West here, even though I'm further east than I was previously. That's the way things go sometimes. So yeah, tell me about the Grateful Dead. Are you like a hippie commie now?
Yeah, definitely a commie. I don't know about a hippie.
Bernie Sanders? You voting for Bernie Sanders?
Definitely going to be, that's no, but they're good, man. They're a good time. I'd recommend it, man. You've seen Fish as well. They're very different. I saw Fish last weekend, so it was nice to kind of I don't know. Both are good and for their own reasons. Just sucks that Fenway Park puts seats in the field. The general admission just takes up space. It's pretty annoying.
Gotta have
But
a
outside
safe
of that,
space. Gotta have a safe space. Look at Dick's. Dick's Sporting Goods Park was a legendary spot to see Fish, right out there in Commerce City, Colorado. And no seats on the field. We had a nice, very cool space. Very cool.
You could walk, you could move, you could dance.
You could dance.
Talk to people. You could sit down on the floor if you wanted.
Met some very interesting people out there.
Yeah, you could say that for sure.
I hope they're watching right now, all those good people out there that we met. I don't even remember some of their names, but they were fantastic folks.
Anyway.
So, cheers.
How about you, man? So your move, yeah. Congrats. Cheers to the new apartment here.
Yeah, I got my Kandinsky on the wall. I know he's a Russian, so you're skeptical. But he's back in the old, he was an abstract expressionist that really is one of my favorite artists. I have to get this this framed because it's just a poster on a wall. I still have things in boxes, but shifting environments here, shifting states. I think it's a good thing. I think change is inevitable, right? The world is going to keep on turning. If you stay stagnant, you're either, I don't know, missing out or smart in some ways, I guess, because everything's like, it makes your head spin, how fast everything goes. But it's about balance, I think. You know, you got to keep the wheels turning, but you also got to know when to pump the brakes.
Yeah. Have you been pumping any brakes recently?
Pumping those brakes, baby. Pumping the brakes.
Someone's gotta.
Someone's got to do it, yeah.
I wonder, is Sebastian Gorka pumping any brakes recently?
Hey, the U.S. WNT won the World Cup. That was epic. I think we're all very happy about that, except for Piers Morgan, Donald Trump, and what's that guy's name, Sebastian Gorka. I don't know why all these people are triggered. Everybody gets so triggered all the time. Look, happy for the ladies. Congratulations. You're world champions. It never really looked in doubt, to be honest. You kind of blew away the competition. But the rest of the world is getting more into women's soccer. I think that's a good thing. All the arguments about equal pay and the gender gap and all that, I'm not going to wade into all that because it's incredibly complex. A lot of it has to do with sponsorship and revenues and, you can't really compare the women's game to the men's. I think it's probably wise to kind of see them both as separate sports in a way. There's a reason why women don't play with men. It's not co-ed, right? The international soccer, there's the women's side, there's the men's side. They're both different. They both bring in different kinds of money, different kinds of fandom. But unfortunately, the win kind of wades into all the politics. But that's kind of what these ladies want. They're very outspoken. Gals like Megan Rapinoe, she's out there and speaking her mind. A lot of it is controversial. I don't know if I don't agree with the whole not singing the anthem and putting your hand over your heart and being so against visiting the White House. I think it's important to have a dialogue. I think you should want to visit the White House. You should be like, hey, face the people that you disagree with and say what's on your mind, and maybe you can make some positive change with that. You don't agree with that. I think that's a good way forward. Instead of just being like, nope. Where do we go? It's not constructive. I think we should have more dialogue. We should face the people we disagree with and all that. But I'm happy for the women, and I think it's been great. And congratulations to U.S. soccer. So that's a long-winded.
Before we get into the politics of it, I guess, how's the who'd they play? How did the games go? Walk us through their win.
Well, the first game they blew out Thailand 13-0, and a lot of people that started the whole these ladies are so smug. Look at them celebrating. Look, it's not about them celebrating. It's not about them scoring that many goals. It's about it's a excuse me. It's kind of a known common courtesy thing in soccer. Once you're up 8-0, you shouldn't you probably shouldn't celebrate you won the World Cup. They were doing these huge they're celebrating every single goal it was an incredible thing, and it is an incredible feat. But they are the defending world champions, and Thailand was made up of a lot of amateur players, and you could tell it was just it was going to get bad, and it did for them. But they just steamrolled right through the competition, and they just took no prisoners. They didn't care. They were like, look, we're winning. We're good. We're American. We're going to celebrate everything. We're going to do it out in the open and in your face, because they've kind of dealt with a lot of they're suing their federation because of the gender pay gap issue. And they're embroiled in that lawsuit, and they were just kind of a lot of pent up emotions, I think. And also you kind of got from this team, you kind of had this mentality that it was for every bit of bullshit that every woman has ever had to endure, these women were going to put it out in the soccer field and be look, we're not going to take it anymore, and we're going to play our best. We're going to do our thing, and we're going to do things on our terms and how we want to do them. So that is a very it's a bit of a feminist empowerment issue, and it's an exciting moment for women's sports. And they didn't stop from there. They kept going. They beat Chile. They beat Sweden. And they went to the knockout round. The games were a little bit tighter. They ended up playing a bunch of European opponents that, Europe is getting better. They're taking women's soccer more seriously. The club game is getting bigger out there. They squeezed by Spain, and they beat the host country, France, and they played England. They won the English game in the semifinal, and they went to the final, played Netherlands, and it really never seemed in doubt, So, congrats to them. But the thing is about women's soccer is you can't just support the national team every 4 years, then complain about, pay these ladies, then you never watch them again. The way that these players make their money is through their professional teams. So you can't just you see people virtue signaling, Chuck Schumer types, Nancy Pelosi types who are it's such a travesty, but it's have they ever watched an NWSL game? I'd argue that they probably haven't. And that's literally how these players all have contracts with NWSL teams, which is the professional league in America. Go watch your local NWSL team, support your local team. That is how you're going to end up paying these ladies. It's not about complaining to Congress or the president. It's about, buying a ticket, buying merchandise, showing that you care about women's soccer. And this isn't the time to do that right now. And it's unfortunate that, NWSL doesn't have teams everywhere. There's no local team in Los Angeles. There's no local team in Arizona. So, it's a growing thing. And it just comes down to are people interested in women's soccer more than just once every 4 years or when the Olympics comes around. I'd argue that it's pretty complex. I don't know if there is enough interest in it for these players to make as much money as people are calling for them to make, but I do believe in a fair amount of gender equality, and I think that should reflect, with I think my whole position is I'm not going to get into the economics of it because a lot of it has to do with sponsorships. Like there's just simply more money that goes into the men's game, and a lot of it has to do with the interest, like in fan interest and engagement and going to games. The men, there's a higher attendance, right? And more people go to these games. Partly that might have to do with marketing. Other things just might have to be like maybe people aren't as interested in women's soccer as they are men's soccer. So the thing is, my position is that every federation should treat its men's and women's team equally in terms of resources, and give their players the opportunity to succeed with, development programs and fields and just general training and coaching. And that's where the equality needs to come in. The whole money thing, I'm not going to get into that because, once again, like players make their money through their professional teams. And if nobody goes to a NWSL game, it's difficult to argue that, these players should get as much money as like Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi, right? So it's very complex. And I'm only going into the politics of this so much is because the women want you to. Like the players of this team were very open about, being political from the get-go. And that's a good thing. I think it is moving the needle in a way. But you can only move the needle so far, and have, you have to, the rest of the country and the world has to, want it as well, right? You can only complain so much about how you're being treated unequally.
So there's, sorry to
No, I just went on for probably 10 minutes.
Yeah, but I think that, it's more like it's probably they're. I think it's more probably than just like their pay. I think that's probably the primary. That's definitely the primary thing. That's what they started out. It's been going on for a while, but like I think it's just it all gets wrapped up into the. We've got two teams in this country and two camps, and everything just gets wrapped up into each of that. And anybody who doesn't agree with Donald Trump on literally every single thing, doesn't, worship him at his altar, his golden altar, of Mar-a-Lago, whatever, that's stupid. But, you're his enemy. So, I think it just gets all wrapped up. Plus, like, I think that, who has the onus of listening to the other person? I think that's on both sides should listen to each other. But how come is the dialogue coming from the Republicans? At all? Are they talking about it? Or doing anything about any of these issues? Or have like the conversation? What's been done to? I guess that's both. Nothing's being done in Congress at all. But I just whose side is should be initiating and engaging in dialogue, and where does the blame fall? It's, ultimately, I don't blame Rapinoe. I always want to call her Rapinoe. That shows how out of the loop I've been. But if I were her, if I were me, and I was invited to go to the White House, I'd say "fuck you," kind of, to him. Why do we have to respect? You respect the office, not that if he's being a jackass, which he is every single day, every moment of he's just today he went on some ridiculous tweet storm. He's like tweeting at a rate of 10 tweets per hour. He's losing his mind. He literally today wrong year that he announced his candidacy.
Yeah.
Completely wrong year. His brain is turning to mush, and he just happens to be a huge asshole who cares about himself and is duping millions of people. So he's a con artist. And so screw him. No, I don't think that's how you acknowledge and register. If you're famous and more people pay attention to you, and you have these privileges to be invited to go to the White House, you have maybe more of a responsibility to register and show, what you think in reasonable ways, non-violent and incendiary, ways. And if that means, she said, I'm not going to the fucking White House, and maybe that's a little extreme, but as Trump said
in January. She said it in January, way before they even won.
It doesn't matter. I could say right now, I wouldn't go to the fucking White House. What is dropping an F-bomb worse than the things that this president has said and done?
Here's why I would go to the White House. Yeah, but this is why you go to the White House, to make a fool of the president. I think it's a great opportunity. You don't achieve anything constructive if you just refuse to go.
I don't want to be in the same. I don't want to be near this guy. I think it's look. I don't know. I'm taking a hard stance right now. In reality, going to the White House is pretty amazing, and it would be pretty insane to walk around in these rooms that where the most important history ever.
Call him out. Call him out when you're there. Be like, look at this guy. He's dumb, right? This is why. And you have all the cameras of the world. You have the perfect platform. Be like, look, I'm right, and this fool's not.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
You never get invited back, but that's the point. The point is to call him out on his BS. If you don't do it at all, then it's we just forget about it.
Here's the best that I have to hope for. I have a dream of if ever he was in this, I happen to be in this, a parade or something, or I feel like I would just want to laugh, a fake obnoxious laugh, or just boo. Maybe just boo as loud as I can. Not saying, something very, very simple. Nothing I hate you for your tax policies and you should register and you're a sex offender and you're, whatever, but just give a solid thumbs down and go boo or something. Just so he understands my just raw, nothing, don't need to know why. I disagree firmly with everything that you are.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just got a kick out of Sebastian Gorka saying that Megan Rapinoe is the,
Antichrist.
Be the responsible for the downfall of Western civilization and Judeo-Christian values, and all of it is sacred. And, what did he say? He's coming. He picked that one line. I'm coming. Hide your kids, as if, not as if that's not a freaking saying that people just use willy-nilly, across America, leaving out that convenient little minutia, and then proceeding to just take that and just take it to its logical extreme. And then that is what she intended to mean, as if, and I'll wrap things up, but, everything that's going on with Jeffrey Epstein, literally raped underage girls. He went after other people's kids. What Sebastian Gorka is crying wolf over with Megan Rapinoe. That's what everything is. Jeffrey Epstein is happening right now is literally about that. The guy would pray. He was a serial child molester, rapist. It's an admitted child molester. So, and that's all that's happening up right now, dude. There's stuff on Twitter filed in court, a woman, a case that was filed in November 2016, or I think May 2016, was about how Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were arguing over who was going to take her virginity. She's younger than, she was maybe 16 years old, and Trump called. This is, and it's not surprising that he said the fact that it's believable. It's definitely true. But Donald Trump called Epstein like a Jew bastard, and like ended up popping her cherry. That's literally in the court documents. And then when Epstein found out, he was so pissed off, he tried to fuck her in the ass. And that's why they stopped being friends 16 years ago, supposedly. I mean, these are like court. This is. Do you believe what she said? You know, she made all of that up, and you know, as a 16-year-old, and she's doing it now because she has so many incentives to come out and say these things publicly, and you know, bring the condemnation of the country. You know, but just to think that is, you know, and this is just the latest thing. I mean, there's all the people who've accused him of molesting and sexual, you know, so, and this guy, and dude, there's also like people writing about how Jeffrey Epstein might be a secret. I mean, I know, like, you know, you're going to think this is like conspiracy or whatever, but one of the reasons Jim Acosta, the labor secretary now, did not, prosecute him, basically gave him such a big leniency, you know, easy plea deal or whatever, non-prosecution agreement, was that he was intelligence, but probably not ours, because U.S. intelligence doesn't tolerate child molesters, you know, and rapists. And so they're not, like, they kind of draw the line there. And so it's like, well, whose intelligence? Why would they give him and where does he make his money? You know, most of the people who work in his line of work don't have, I mean, they're working hard. They don't have much spare time. Well, how does this guy shuffle between his 3 houses, you know, and have all these, you know, massage these, you know, do what he did, prey on all these children, you know. How did that happen? And you know, is he getting, I don't know, this stuff is like maybe going to come out, you know, over the next couple of years. I mean, shit takes forever. It's you know, one major lesson of the day. But yeah, dude, Bill Clinton flew on his plane a whole bunch of times.
Bill Clinton.
So this is why. I mean, there are other things too. Like, you know, this guy has a lot of different friends, a lot of different places. You know, this is the plutocratic rot of the system. Just like, how does this guy for 8 years or 10 years, he didn't show up to the police, like every 90 days he was supposed to show up and, like, you know, talk to the NYPD, and he didn't do it once. And the NYPD is they're fine with it, supposedly. You know, preferential treatment, man, it's ridiculous. I mean, the justice system, you know, it's just bogus. And Bill Barr is out here defending him and saying, yeah, he, you know, basically he's a parrot for Trump. I mean, it could go into the whole executive order thing that just happened. But I mean, it's all, this is not, you know, this isn't even one of the biggest stories right now. This has just happened in the last week. I mean, it's just nonstop. It's fucking nonstop.
Well, the thing about how toxic our political climate has got is, like, people side with their side no matter what, despite all of the evidence, you know, and it's like, that's one of the biggest problems right now. Like, we've lost any sight of, like, what, like, real morals and ethics are, because it's like, just like, well, is he on my side or is he on that side? And everyone does this. I mean, it's very dangerous. I think we have to be able to look beyond politics, because yes, they're everything, but they're also just politics. And we have to look at real humanity. We have to understand, like, what's right and what's wrong. And I think that it's becoming increasingly difficult to do so, because, I mean, you're right, and there is a rot in the system. There's definitely, I do think that there's a lot of rot in America, and a lot of it is, you know, these older elite type folks that are, you know, bending the law in their own way, and that's going to exist regardless of political party. I think we've seen that, and so I think it's up to just real Americans, like, just stand up individuals, to look beyond that toxicity and to be able to understand like what is morally true and what's morally right, and to look beyond the politics and the bipartisan or the partisan nature of a lot of these things, man. I think that's where I'm coming from, man. I'm trying not to see things so much as blue and red, left and right anymore. I'm trying to see more of like what's right and what's wrong, and also like, and yeah, well, that's basically it, right? I mean, I think that transcends political sides, and part of it is kind of once again, it's like a have and a have-not thing. I think the biggest class war in America the biggest culture war in America is a class war. I think it's the establishment and people who are just complaining about everything on YouTube. I think a lot of the people that are complaining about everything on YouTube are probably on the right side of history, and you have to find a way to kind of like make that.
There's a lot of con artists on YouTube though too, man. It's a wild west, man. Everybody just like. Sorry to interrupt. But
It's the grievance economy is what it is. We were talking about this in a text thing with Jeff Darren. It's a thing about it's about this grievance economy, and this is going back to Gorka too, where it's like the right is so keen on free speech this, free speech that, but all they do, like, they just complain about the left all the time. Like it's ridiculous. It's like if you're gonna be a free speech warrior, then let everybody talk, man. And I guess that's their point, is like, well, if they can do that, then I can complain about it. I'm Sebastian Gorka, and I know I sound like a villain, and I know I'm evil. He's like, dude, shut up, man. But it's like this guy, dude. It's like, and this is what it's all about. It's about clicks, and it's about like, you know, getting people to like engage with your complaints. And everybody does this. Megan Rapinoe did it with like complaining that like you know, the Women's World Cup final also had a couple men's final like soccer games on the same day, and she was complaining about it, and it got clicks. And I'm not saying she was doing it for clicks, but it's like the more people complain, you know, the more their side it's gonna resonate with their side, and just gets to this whole like everybody just starts whining about everything. It's like, look, we need to acknowledge everybody has a right to say what's on their mind, but we also just can't get angry about every little thing. I mean, we can. I mean, that's the thing about free speech. You can get angry about whatever, but you can't form policy on that, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree pretty much with that. I think it's there's a quote Mark Zuckerberg said back in 2005, a year after the Facebook was launched. Actually, I mean, lest anybody forget, the precursor to Facebook was called Face Mash, which is, I forgot about this and remembered, but he would just pair these randomized faces, Harvard students, and then people would vote on, it was a hot or not thing. He almost got threatened to, you know, he had to shut it down, and Harvard was all pissed. Anyway, that was the Facebook. But he said, our goal wasn't so much to create an online community, but to create a mirror of the community that existed in real life. And I think that's spot on. I mean, I think he's pretty accurate with that. It's just, you know, people go online, and it is what we make of it. I mean, that's the whole internet, especially social media. It's how we interact with everybody else. It's, you know, and it's just an emotional, like, you go in for an emotional fix, and, you know, you come out and you're back into the real world, but like all this stuff is just in your head, and but so, I mean, that's and it's now the more that we've learned and acclimated ourselves to it, it's a double-edged sword, you know. People know how to, I mean, you know, manipulate other people, and I think that is that's happening on varying degrees. Some of it is state sponsored, a lot of it's for profit, but I mean, you're right. It is free speech, but it's also this free speech that's just making our political system. It's a lot of ways that it's broken on its own, just structural. I mean, you know, gerrymandering, campaign finance, all these basic things. You know, we've had two presidents in the last 20 years that have been minority presidents, and they happen to be Republicans, a minority vote. What does that say? You know, how many times does that happen until it's like, does the presidency, you know, it's an interesting question. I think that doesn't necessarily need to be the person with the most votes. I think by you know, changing around districting, you even out districts so that more districts are competitive. I think that that changes the entire political system, such that maybe you know, election voter turnouts. We don't need to change the electoral college entirely. You know, voting will be more competitive, and you know, across all districts, and it won't be this, like, you know, urban rural hub, but I mean, or divide. But I don't know. I think that there's it's all, I've lost my train of thought. I've got so into the weeds. But I don't know, man. I think
Freudian slip.
What?
Nice Freudian slip. You know, I think our political system is, like, inevitably beyond broken, personally. I don't think that there is any coming back from this. I think it's going to get crazier and crazier, because you're right. People that have this, like, power, this, like, corrupt power, are going to do whatever they can to hold on to it more and more. And the people who don't have anything, or are the ones that are just, like, complaining about it on Twitter, are just going to get increasingly desperate and, like, just crazed, and it's going to all come across as, like, conspiratorial, even if there is some truth to it. And I think that there needs to be a dramatic restructuring of society for us to make it out of the next decade or two. I'm not talking about, like, tomorrow. I'm talking about, like, long term, the next decade or two. There's going to be such widespread changes to civilization in terms of automation, in terms of what work is, in terms of what money is, in terms of inequalities, in terms of health, in terms of access to healthcare, in terms of, like, just being a healthy person that's not addicted to, you know, drugs, opioids, you know, heroin, soda, hamburgers, like salt, pizza. I mean, these are really important things, man. I think it's going to be really, I think there needs to be a massive awakening in this country, in this world.
I think that while some of those things are desirable, in certain cases, I think that, I mean, my goals are just more modest, in the sense that, like, I think just internet literacy, and what your goal, you said earlier, just, like, not trying to interpret everything in red versus blue and liberal versus conservative. I mean, I think it's a combination between you know, corporate big bad media. You know, they have resources, investigative journalism. The Miami Herald, uncovering this whole Epstein, you know, news thing. That's old school media, right? And that there serves a purpose, and it's good, and we should support it and follow it. And then there's people on Twitter who, you know, have opinions that you might agree or disagree with for various reasons. Hopefully they're real people and not bots, you know, and people spend their time on whatever. And if people want to, like, you know, just get conned into thinking. I mean, I guess they're not. Are they being conned if they just? They're not. If they think the wrong thing. That's me.
How can you trust the media?
Here's the thing. This is how I assign blame and why I say con. Sebastian Gorka knows what he's doing. Donald Trump, you would think, I mean, he's an adult, so it's like, shouldn't you know what you're doing? But that he doesn't have a moral compass. But like
Rachel Maddow knows what she's doing too. Is she always right? Is she on the side of truth? I don't know. She's on NBC's side, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, I think Rachel Maddow is more tethered to objective
corporate money. Objective corporate money.
Reality, though. She deals with reality. Whereas
I
don't think Sebastian Gorka and Mike Cernovich and whatever his name is from InfoWars, Alex Jones, and some of these, they're.
It's a different reality from the one that you choose to exist in, but it's still reality. And that's the hard thing for liberals to wrap their minds around. Like, they're not wrong about everything. I mean, they're not just complete nutjob. Maybe they are, but they have a right to say they have a right to say what they're saying.
Alex Jones is just like whipping up people with, I mean, slander in a lot of cases, which is why the Sandy Hook families are suing him and winning. But it's like, I think that he's intelligent enough to know that
he's a comedian. He's a comedian. He's a comedian. Once you get past that, you understand what he's doing. He's a comedian.
He does. He's a performance.
You don't understand it. You don't get it.
Is he a performance artist?
He is.
That's the only, but I don't. But the humor, I think it's more. I mean, look,
you don't get it.
Dude, it is. This guy is just saying outlandish.
Sorry, he has a right to. That's the problem.
I understand, and I have a right to criticize him and say that he's a bad person and he should know better.
Mm-hmm. But he has every right to do everything that he does.
I mean, does he have? Yeah. He has a right to say whatever he wants. But so yeah, and then if
there are consequences to what you say, though.
There are consequences. That's why when he's going to court, I'm kind of rooting for Sandy Hook families, like all up.
Sure.
I hope they kind of, fly over somehow. I like the Pizzagate thing. He kind of came back. He had to say that he was. Stuff. But this is what I'm saying. I hope, and this is what I mean by internet literacy. It's not, he can say whatever he wants. He's a lunatic, just like terrible human being, asshole of America. He's a terrible human being for what he's saying about.
I don't think he's as bad as you think he is.
Sandy, for what he said
about bad. That's bad. But everything else about him, that's the only thing that's bad about him, I think.
That's enough. He's a terrible, for what he said, that makes him, I don't care about anything else that he does or says. The fact that he is still going on about the Sandy Hook thing, he is a terrible trash human being. That aside, it's up to other people to educate themselves and learn and realize that this guy, I mean, you can believe in conspiracy theories if you want, but it's like,
there are much worse people, though. There are many worse people than Alex Jones that are getting away with way worse stuff, though. And that's our problem. We get so wrapped up in the media frenzy of like, oh my God, that's the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. And it's like, yeah, but he didn't actually harm anybody. There are people that are getting away with harming real people and harming people's lives. And that's the biggest problem to me right now. Not Alex Jones. Alex Jones is like a distraction from what's really going on in the world. And we just choose to focus on the stupidity of people like Alex Jones when they really are inherently just comedic performance artists that rile conservatives up and liberals hate him.
What about that guy? What about the guy who lived in the van?
Down by the river?
What?
Down by the river?
The guy who had the stickers all over his van, who mailed packet. He's listening to these people. Mm-hmm. They're inciting people to violence.
Yeah. If you listen to NBC, though, you listen to things like NBC.
No. Let me finish. Nothing to do with ABC. ABC is inciting. I mean, they're just look.
They're
violence, violence in America, racial, ethnic, hate crimes have increased. I mean, you could check the FBI's website. The statistics are there, and the rate is increasing. So, I don't, and this would be a problem if Donald, people were saying ridiculous shit beforehand. He didn't help, and they'll be doing it afterwards. But you can't. I mean, who bears the burden? Where is it? Who's responsible? Is there any responsibility for the internet? The quasi-public figures who are inciting people to commit hate crimes. I would say that, how do you prove that? Well, there's freedom of speech and everything, but I mean, I think that some people are, and on the left too, the one guy who went and shot up the Republicans at the softball game. That person was. These people are crazy. They are crazy people. They are lunatics. It just so happens that they're falling and being radicalized more so on the right. I mean, that's just that's also true.
Well, that's not a fact, though. I mean, I wouldn't.
One guy who tried to shoot up. I mean, this is just in America. One guy who tried to shoot up Republicans at a softball game. Everything else has pretty much been. I think there's been a lot of religious, white kind of Christian, far right crazies that are. I mean, Charleston, the guy who drove his car in and killed a random person.
I agree, man, but you're focusing on things that like mass media talks about. I mean, there's crimes every day in America. You're talking about mass hate crimes that are a problem, but it's like, what about crime, everyday crime? Who is committing crimes on the regular? I mean, you're talking about things that get covered in mass media. But you're not really talking about the whole like spectrum of who commits crimes in the world or America or anything.
What crimes are more worth coverage?
Every crime. Someone shoots somebody on the street.
You only have so much time in the day, man. You only have so much time in the day. It's not, it's 24 hours.
I'm not willing to let off the hook, these big corporate media that is dead set on dividing people through being woke and like being a woke leftist and all that. I think that's a big problem too, and it's like a lot of people on the left, myself included. I mean, I'm someone on the left that wants to talk about it because you need to talk about the issues that your side or whatever engages in, and I think that there's incredible division on the left, and it sets people into identity politics, and it sets people into us versus them on every level, politically, racially, class-wise, and that's what I see when I see. I have to ignore it. These NBC gave Andrew Yang 2 questions in 3 hours on the debate stage. I mean, that's insanity, and that's not fair, and that's a clear bias. And it's like, I can see it, man. I see that when there is a perceived threat to whatever this like status quo is of who has the power in this country, that is when you get smeared, you get silenced as a Russian propagandist or as a loony or as someone who doesn't matter or they're not polling high at all. But they're not really capturing the true essence of why people support these kinds of candidates anyways. And that's what gets me. And it's so easy to focus on Alex Jones and be like, oh God, he's a hate monger and he's horrible. He doesn't matter. If everybody ignored Alex Jones on the left and focused on your own goddamn party and your own issues in your daily life and the people in your world, then you wouldn't have to worry about Alex Jones. The fact that you talk about him is because you're brainwashed by these mass corporations that want you to feel like he's the big boogeyman when he's not. Alex Jones is not the boogeyman. He's a stupid guy that who cares? He hasn't affected your life at all. He hasn't affected your life or anyone you know at all. Anyone.
Okay, the corporate media has not told me that I need to be concerned. The corporate media scary boogeyman has not been,
Trump.
And whenever we fall asleep, a small needle, it pops, the corporate media, from our television sends, radio waves while we sleep.
You'd be surprised, man. You'd be surprised.
Look, I choose to care about Alex Jones because I think he's done reprehensible things.
I don't think he has.
And I derive pleasure out of his legal woes. So, and
well,
that's
great.
just that's who I am, So
a waste of time.
and it is. I don't dwell on it. I just, receive my satisfaction and then move on. But, in terms of the corporate media, not giving Andrew Yang, it should be fair, allotments of time. I don't know how that, that's why I don't.
They shut his microphone off. They literally shut his microphone off.
Really?
Yeah. He was trying to interject, and they would shut his microphone off because they don't want to hear from him. That's why he's going to get far. And people like it because the real people see real candidates that aren't following an agenda. Real candidates that don't follow an agenda is what people want, not what Rachel Maddow wants or Chuck Todd.
I think a lot of people want a lot of different things and trying to bunch everyone into saying real people or real agendas. Authenticity
matters. Authenticity matters.
Absolutely matters. And apparently people think these Democratic candidates are more authentic than the con artist in chief. But I think that, a lot of things come into it. And I think some people think that Andrew Yang is impossible from the start, so they're not really considering him. Realistically, they think that they like, some of the things he's saying, but don't think that he has a real chance of persuading or having, many other Americans vote for him as well. So they don't support him and they disqualify themselves. That's just how human logic and rationality seems to work. The way that it's set up now, if we had ranked choice voting,
it's disingenuous. It's just media to do that.
The media might do that too, but the system itself is structured that way. You need to raise a lot of money. You need how is the rest of the country voting? Are people more conservative? Is this country ready to vote in somebody who wants to initiate a universal basic income? I happen to think that America. It's great that he's bringing that subject up, and we're talking about it, and we're becoming more comfortable with that, or at least discussing it reasonably, hopefully, But at this moment in time, I don't see the majority of Americans voting for universal basic income, and I think that's why he's being written off kind of from the start.
He's not. The media writes him off. You don't understand. You're following you're not following the conversation of what people are saying. You're following what the media tells you about these candidates. And we're done with the era of gatekeepers. You're living in the 80s, man. Gatekeepers are done. There is no more gatekeeping. It's done. It's over.
I mean, I think though that a lot of Americans,
equality. Let's have real equality, real fairness.
To run a campaign, you need money. How do you persuade people with money?
Social media.
By pitching
social media.
An agenda and a campaign, and people with money, probably are not convinced in UBI just yet.
They are. He's rising in the polls, and he gained 100,000 followers after the debate in one day when he had 2 questions. He had 2 questions asked to him, and he gained 100,000 followers in one day.
I mean. Yeah, I mean, it's early. I still shouldn't be talking about. Depending on who it came down to. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people in this field. I don't know why I'm choosing to attack Andrew Yang. I just don't think that it's the corporate media bearing responsibility for maliciously steering, only covering certain things. And
it is though. It is. This is why Bernie Sanders didn't have any traction in 2016 when people wanted to vote for him. But from the beginning, they were already saying that it was stacked against him. He had no chance. When he did have a chance, he would have beat Trump. We all know this by now. But the media was like, no, he's not our guy. I'm skeptical of the corporate media, and I don't trust it at all. I don't think we need Miami Heralds anymore, and that's sad because I'm someone who studied journalism, and this is what I believe in.
Why the Miami Herald uncovered?
That was a gross overreaction and overgeneralization. But my point is that media is evolving.
The investigative journalism is like the most. It's how I mean, for better or not, maybe the system isn't perfect the way that it's all funded. That big ass corporations. I mean, maybe you could make them. I mean, is this really something we want to do? Make media, corporate media, public, state-owned? I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. We don't want state-owned corporate media. Well, then what's the alternative? I think you could talk in the 90s, early 90s or late 80s, we got rid of the fairness doctrine, which said that if you're saying news, you have to give equal, weight to both sides. Maybe that's probably a better. I think we should have that again. You wouldn't have Sean Hannity saying news on the bottom as he just goes on some insane monologue.
Opinion. It's all opinion. It's not news.
It's all opinion. It's just not even news. And he said that himself. But if he's not, you can't. It shouldn't be able to say news on the screen. It's very simple. You shouldn't be able to say news if it's just editorializing. Call it something else, but not the news. I mean,
that's why I think we're doomed, though. I happen to think we're doomed because we're beyond that. There's no going back from that. Everything's going to be biased opinion from now on.
I think you could potentially. I think that is something. Just because there's multiple examples in American law of shit that we did wrong. I mean, everything with the civil. I mean, there's. With the whole, so every Dred Scott. I mean, Dred Scott was like a terrible ruling, right? But that's no longer law right now. We've corrected it. And that's what we do. For better or worse. Sometimes we move backwards and make the wrong choice, but. There's nothing stopping us from going back and bringing that back and saying, hey, maybe we should. I mean, that was a ridiculous analogy, but my point is just because things, we can experiment and we should, if we just had a discussion about these ideas, maybe that's the corporate media has no incentive in talking about that because that won't add revenue to their bottom line, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe a more educated and informed citizenry will have spillover effects that will just fall out over and just increase our quality of life and across the board, and people will spend more money and the economy will grow. I mean, I just think having an informed citizenry is probably the starting step one of democracy, right?
Best way to educate the youth about internet literacy: don't trust the corporate media. Ask questions. Always be skeptical. Find sources from every direction. Do a lot of research. Go into see all the sources. Read the corporate media. Read independent media. See opinion. See news. See facts. See AP. Know it all. That is what we need to educate the youth. Don't trust the corporate media, but acknowledge that there is differences in opinion and facts are hard to come by these days.
Yeah, but the reality shouldn't be a wilderness of just
It is. There's no more gatekeeping.
Yeah.
You're living in the past.
Here's my other point, though. You need to be analytical too, and you need to have context. So it's more than just be skeptical. Because look, Russia today. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm the Russia boogeyman. RT. It's always question. Always ask. That's their whole thing.
Good. Yeah. I like some of RT. Some of it's good.
They're propaganda.
There are some people on there that are good on there.
Dude, they are 100% a propaganda outlet for the Russian government, which happens to be a mafia state. Okay, and so they are just trying to. And they happen to be anti-Western and anti-democracy and anti all the liberal.
Anti-imperialism, which you think is Russian.
Classical liberal values that you and I both appreciate and
They're
value.
anti-imperialism. They're anti-imperialism. That's a good thing.
No, they're not. No, they're not. They are pro-Kremlin, and that's it. They are trying to save their own asses, and they don't give a shit about your values or whatever the hell you fucking think. They want their money, okay? And they want to keep their money.
NBC does too. And what's the difference between that and NBC? What's the difference? What's the difference?
Because they stole it. They stole it from the Russian people.
NBC's stealing it from you. NBC's stealing the money from you.
Yeah. This is going to get into crazy territory because the Russian government is not like NBC. We have a system of laws, and they make their money legally. Okay, whatever or not your criticism of it, they are the laws that we have. Okay, the way that the Russian government, the way that people have gotten there and they're acquired their power and their influences by kissing the ring, essentially, and playing by their rules, which, there's just rampant corruption, and it all comes back to they're not
Russia! It's all Russia!
Russia's
killing everybody!
They're not being the rule of law in Russia, okay?
Speaking of Russia, it's time for Stranger Things.
They stole all the wealth.
They're stealing your mind, bro.
It's the kleptocracy. They've stolen everything.
We're in a kleptocracy too. It's the corporate. It's a corporate. A corporatocracy is the same thing as a kleptocracy. Steal from the common man. Steal from the common man.
Their entire government, it was a free for all, man. The '90s, it was a free for all. People have died. Many people have died. Journalists, crime was rampant. They hired KGB agents. That was the most lucrative thing. They would leave and go into private. There's private security firms up the wazoo, all former secret.
Write a book about it. Write a book about it.
Anything goes. My whole point is that I don't know what we were talking about before. The corporate media is there. It is different from what the Russians have done. I'm fucking distracted. How did I start talking about the Russians?
Because you're about to watch Stranger Things 3. Stranger Things 3, you're watching the Russians. It's all about everything, and have a great time. And, I'm happy that we're having this conversation.
Be skeptical. RT, Russia Today, just don't, they're just trying they're trying to sow doubt with across the rest of the whole media ecosphere. They're just conspiratorial.
NBC is too. I mean, this is the thing. There's so many parallels, but the thing is,
go back in time and research how many different stories RT came out with about the Malaysia Airlines flight that was shot down in 2014. Just go back and count how many stories.
I don't care.
Okay? And then you can choose whether or not you believe the Dutch government's investigation that very clearly lays out with evidence and facts and reality and evidence about how the Russians shot down that plane and killed 300 innocent people on board. And then you can look back and see how many different conspiracy and possible stories, and be skeptical about all the different possible scenarios about how this plane was shot down by Russian guerrillas that are occupying Ukraine, okay? And then tell me that RT is totally on par with NBC News, and
NBC doesn't care about helping out the poor. They don't care about having people live.
At the end of the day, they have more. They have a legacy. They have a legacy that goes back to the creation of TV, the medium itself, about trying to tell objective reality, and
it's over, man.
They might not be the best at it, but they're still a hell of a lot better than a lot of other people trying to interpret reality. Flaws of funding, corporate, whatever, PR firms.
I don't trust them. Sorry, don't trust them. And that's not going to change my opinion. I study journalism. I see the way that this is going, man. And I just I'm sorry that I don't think they have the best interests of the American people in their hearts, So that's the thing, man. Watch Stranger Things. You're gonna figure out about the world and about America more and Russia, and it's great. And yeah, great, awesome, have fun. It's been productive as usual. And what are you closing on?
Thias out.
All right, Zandy. Zandy out, I guess. God, this is hectic, man. Hectic show here.